What just happened to the Inoue family, and what is this news we are hearing about Roman Reigns' health and speculated return back to action after a sudden disappearance from WWE? It began not with a match bell, nor the roar of a crowd, but with silence. A silence that blanketed the backstage corridors of WWE Raw like thick fog. It was a Monday night unlike any other. The fans were there. The lights were bright. The Titantron flashed in rhythmic pulses. But something was missing. Something. Someone. For those close enough to the locker room that evening, it wasn't just a show, it was a goodbye in disguise. Because in that moment, 1 moment ago, everything changed. Roman Reigns, the indomitable tribal chief, the face of an empire called the Bloodline, had fallen, not in battle, not at WrestleMania, but in the quiet, unforgiving grip of reality. A health battle once believed to be in remission had returned. And this time, it wasn't just a fight. It was a farewell. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear is not just a WWE storyline. It's a real-world tragedy. A family's heartbreak. A company in shock. And the story of a man whose body carried the weight of a dynasty, now facing the one opponent he couldn't spear into submission. For Roman Reigns, Lady Joseph Inoue, the war wasn't just in the ring. It was in his blood. It began with whispers. A locker room assistant noticed Roman hadn't arrived for pre-show briefings. A trainer confirmed he'd cancelled his in-ring warm-up. Then Paul Heyman was seen leaving medical quarters, head down, eyes swollen. Something was wrong. And the silence that followed was louder than any crowd pop. It was Jey Uso who said it first, softly, behind closed doors, in a voice lined with disbelief. "Joe's not coming back." In that second, the oxygen was sucked from the locker room. Those words weren't just about absence, they were an omen. We've all watched Roman Reigns dominate for years, WrestleMania main events, championship runs, a faction that ruled WWE with precision and fear. But what fans didn't see was the pain. The fatigue behind the curtain. The private doctor visits. The unexplained absences. The smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Roman was fighting something, and he kept it quiet for as long as he could. Because Roman Reigns wasn't just battling leukemia. He was protecting the Bloodline's legacy. This wasn't the first time. In 2018, he shocked the world by stepping away, revealing he had battled leukemia since his 20s. He beat it. He returned. Stronger. Louder. But this time it came back not as a flare-up, but as a storm. A diagnosis had been confirmed just 2 weeks prior to that Monday Night Raw. Quietly. Without press. Without promos. Roman's blood tests revealed the resurgence of his chronic myeloid leukemia. Aggressive. Relentless. The kind that didn't care about championships. According to a source inside WWE's medical team, who spoke only on condition of anonymity, the moment the test results came in, Roman refused to let it go public. "Let the fans enjoy the shows," he reportedly said. "I'll deal with it in silence." But his body was deteriorating faster than expected. Travel was painful. Training sessions were shorter. Even lifting a microphone had become exhausting. Still, he showed up. Still, he performed. Still, he smiled. Until he couldn't. The breaking point came during a closed-door rehearsal at WWE headquarters. Roman collapsed. Trainers rushed in. Paul Heyman was the first to kneel beside him. "I saw fear in Paul's eyes," a witness said. Not the character. Not the wise man. The real man. Scared for his friend. What followed was a quiet storm of decisions. Doctors urged immediate hospitalization. Roman, stubborn as ever, demanded privacy. The WWE board was briefed. Executives froze. TripleH reportedly broke down during the call. Vince McMahon, now retired but still informed, was said to have stared silently at his phone for 5 full minutes before whispering, "Not Joe, not again." By the next morning, the Inoue family had been notified. A family known for producing warriors, Yokozuna, the Usos, Rikishi, Umaga, The Rock, now gathering not for a celebration, but for a vigil. The official word didn't reach the public. Not yet. But something shifted. Jimmy and Jey Uso pulled from scheduled appearances. Solo Sikoa was flown home early. Tamina cancelled a fan meet. Behind the scenes, WWE Samoan royalty circled around Roman, not as superstars, but as family. And at the center of that circle, Galena Becker, Roman's wife. His quiet pillar. She hadn't been seen on camera in years, but when Roman was admitted to California Pacific Medical Center, she never left his side. Nurses say she held his hand through the worst of the tests. She was there when the diagnosis became prognosis. And she was there when the doctors said what no one wanted to hear, there may not be much time. It was then, and only then, that the Inoue family was called in. They came not in limousines, but in silence. Cars arriving at odd hours. Hooded figures slipping through side doors. Security increased not for fame, but for privacy. In one corner of the hospital, a waiting room once reserved for surgical consults became sacred ground. The Inoue family filled it wall to wall. Samoan chants echoed softly, prayers whispered in native tongue. A single black and white photo of Roman in his first WrestleMania match was placed beside a flickering candle. Next to it, a faded Polaroid of young Joe with his father, Sika. It was Sika's arrival that broke everyone. Aged, stoic, the former wild Samoan entered the hospital with trembling hands. He didn't speak much. Just walked to Roman's bedside and wept. A witness said, he didn't cry like a father watching his son die. He cried like a warrior mourning the last of his tribe. As word trickled through the WWE universe, reactions poured in like rainfall. Seth Rollins was said to be inconsolable after learning the news. Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley now, called from AEW and spoke with Roman for over an hour. Becky Lynch posted a single black heart to her story. Paul Heyman, meanwhile, vanished from all programming for a full week. Rumors swirled that he too had been by Roman's side, whispering one last promo only Roman could hear. But the most heartbreaking moment came when the youngest members of the family were brought in, Roman's children. They hadn't been told everything, but they knew. When his daughter asked, "Daddy, are you coming home soon?" the room fell into silence. No one could answer. No one dared lie. And somewhere in that stillness, Roman reportedly smiled, brushed her hair back, and whispered, "Always." For decades, WWE has blurred the line between fiction and reality. But this time, there's no storyline. No heel turn. No shocking swerve. This is reality. This is Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table, now lying in a hospital bed, not as a performer, but as a father, a son, a husband, and a man facing the unthinkable. Fans around the world have begun to gather. Outside WWE headquarters, signs read "Thank you Roman." In Philadelphia, a mural of Roman was painted overnight near the WrestleMania stadium where he last stood tall. Across social media, wrestlers from every promotion, WWE, AEW, and JPW, have put rivalries aside to pay tribute to the man who redefined modern wrestling. Because Roman Reigns was more than a superstar. He was an anchor. He was the leader you didn't cheer for at first, but couldn't stop respecting. He was the thunder in the arena. The calm in the chaos. The bloodline that connected kayfabe to truth. And now, he's slipping away. In a private statement never released to the public, it said Roman dictated a message from his hospital bed. It was short. Simple. But it echoed with the weight of everything he's carried. Tell them I love them. The fans. The boys in the back. My brothers. My family. If this is it, then I want them to know I fought. For the name. For the legacy. For them. As we stand on the edge of what might be the final chapter of Roman Reigns' life, we are forced to ask a question no one ever imagined: how do you say goodbye to the head of the table? How do you close the book on a man who made the entire industry bend to his presence? Maybe you don't. Maybe you keep him alive in every cheer, every chant, every entrance that echoes through an arena. Maybe the legacy of Roman Reigns isn't in the belts or the boos, but in the silence he leaves behind. The silence that says everything has changed. And nothing ever will be the same again. It was just after midnight when the final pieces began to move. The California hospital that had become a second home to Roman Reigns stood under a silver moon, its corridors hushed, its windows aglow. Inside, in one of its most guarded wings, time itself seemed to slow. Nurses whispered. Lights dimmed. Monitors blinked steadily beside a bed draped in quiet reverence. Roman Reigns was still breathing. But every breath was a battle. Every rise of his chest a war cry muffled beneath medical beeping. And around him, the Inoue family gathered tighter, like the final defense in a crumbling fortress. By now, the entire WWE organization knew. Not just the locker room. Not just the boardroom. From the catering staff to the security detail, the word had spread: Roman was dying. And then Paul Heyman arrived. He didn't enter with fanfare. He didn't speak when he stepped into the room. But everyone felt the air change when he crossed the threshold. For over a decade, Paul had been Roman's voice. The advocate. The storyteller. The wise man. But tonight, he came not to guide a champion, but to kneel beside a friend. He took Roman's hand in silence. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Paul leaned in, placed his forehead against Roman's, and whispered words no one else could hear. A nurse nearby swore she saw Paul's lips tremble. Later, someone asked him what he had said. He replied with a single sentence: I told him the island will remember him. What followed was the most sacred moment in Inoue family history. One by one, each member approached Roman's bedside. Jimmy and Jey Uso, with tears streaming, placed a ceremonial lei on the blanket that covered his chest. Rikishi, holding back sobs, whispered in Samoan as he pressed a kiss to his forehead. Solo Sikoa stood last, not speaking, not crying. Just staring, as if trying to memorize his brother's face forever. Then came Sika. Roman's father. The man who birthed the bloodline long before fans ever heard the word. He placed his hand on his son's chest and said, Go with strength, my son. Go with honor. Outside the hospital, a storm began to gather. Reporters had picked up rumors. TMZ posted a cryptic tweet. Reddit exploded with speculation. Roman Reigns' health crisis. Is this the end? Bloodline broken? But inside the WWE, an emergency meeting had already been called. In Stamford, Connecticut, at WWE headquarters, a war room was formed. TripleH, Nick Khan, Bruce Pritchard. Even Stephanie McMahon, long absent from public affairs, dialed in from a private location. The question on the table was not whether Roman would return. The question was, what happens if he doesn't? Because this wasn't just the fall of a wrestler. It was the collapse of a kingdom. Roman Reigns didn't just hold titles. He held television ratings, locker room morale, pay-per-view buy rates, and generational storylines. He was the centerpiece of WrestleMania. The cornerstone of SmackDown. The nucleus of the bloodline. Without him, the entire machine risked unraveling. In that room, arguments flared. Some wanted to immediately announce Roman's condition and cancel upcoming shows. Others believed in silence, protecting the illusion. Protecting him. But then a voice cut through the noise. It was Heyman. Do not bury him before he's gone, he said. Let the fans believe in the myth. Let the legend breathe a little longer. And so, a plan was born. The next episode of SmackDown would go on. But with a single twist, no tribal celebration. No music. No promo. Just a solitary shot. An empty chair at the head of the table. Unspoken. Undisturbed. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Roman's condition began to shift. Doctors said it could be hours. Maybe days. But Roman, ever the fighter, lingered. Galena refused to sleep. She sat at his side with their children curled up near her feet. Jimmy and Jay took shifts outside the room. At one point, Rikishi sat in the hallway holding Solo's hand, the two of them completely still, like statues in mourning. And then Roman woke up. Briefly. Barely. But long enough to say one thing: promise me, don't let them fight each other. It was a plea that struck deeper than anything before. Because the bloodline, for all its power, had been fraying. Solo Sikoa, colder by the day. Jimmy and Jay, torn apart. The legacy Roman had built was beginning to devour itself. But in that hospital room, something changed. They nodded. All of them. Sworn enemies. Real brothers. For Roman, they would stand together. For Roman, they would be family again. That night, a call was placed to The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, cousin, megastar, wrestling's crossover king. He had been watching from afar. Declining appearances. Avoiding storylines. But when the phone rang, he didn't hesitate. He flew in quietly. No cameras. No entourage. Just a man coming to say goodbye. And when The Rock entered that hospital room, even the nurses stepped aside. For minutes, the two men, Roman and Dwayne, sat in silence, hands clasped. No words spoken. No words needed. Later, a nurse would say, they didn't look like two superstars. They looked like two cousins saying goodbye. Two kings, one throne, fading into legend. And then came the hardest moment of all, the message to the fans. Roman couldn't record a video. He didn't have the strength. But he dictated a letter. One final address to the WWE Universe. It read, to the millions who stood by me, thank you. You gave me purpose. You gave me power. I wore the crown not for ego, but for you. If my time has come, know this, I fought until the last breath. Not as a champion. Not as a chief. But as a man. And I leave with love. The letter was delivered to WWE headquarters, to be read by Michael Cole on SmackDown, when the time was right. But that time had not come. Not yet. Because Roman Reigns, somehow, impossibly, was still holding on. In the days that followed, the world began to hold its breath. Not just the WWE Universe. Not just the fans in packed arenas or those glued to their screens. The entire wrestling industry, from New York to Tokyo, from Mexico City to London, paused. A strange, reverent quiet settled over every locker room, every training facility, every hallway painted with legacy. Because Roman Reigns, the man who had carried the weight of an empire, was slipping away. And no one knew how to say goodbye. WWE entered uncharted waters. No merchandise campaigns. No official press releases. No dramatic farewell packages set to music and tears. Just silence. A deliberate, heart-wrenching silence. On SmackDown, the show opened to a haunting image. The ceremonial table, untouched. The leather chair at its head, empty. A single strand of Roman's tribal beads resting on the seat. No commentary. No explanation. And yet, everyone understood. The bloodline was mourning. Backstage, the tension was unbearable. Superstars like Seth Rollins and Randy Orton were said to be unable to focus during rehearsals. Bianca Belair reportedly wept during a segment run-through and asked for time alone. One of the youngest members of NXT called Roman our North Star in a post that was taken down minutes later, likely at WWE's request. But perhaps no one took it harder than Jey Uso. Jey had risen through Roman's shadow. Fought him. Loved him. Hated him. And now, he was breaking. Witnesses say he refused interviews. Refused scripted segments. During a quiet moment, he stood alone in gorilla position, looking at a paused Titantron image of Roman's entrance and whispered. He made me believe I was main event. And he was right. Roman didn't just rule. He elevated. He pulled others into greatness. He didn't need the mic to build stars, he needed a look, a moment, a match. For every championship he won, Roman Reigns gave 10 others something far greater, belief. But what happens when the architect of belief disappears? That's the question that began haunting WWE's leadership. Because a vacuum was forming. The titles could be retired. The chants could fade. But the absence of Roman's presence, the absence of direction, threatened to unravel the fragile alliances backstage. And then, something happened no one saw coming. Solo Sikoa, stoic, ruthless, enigmatic, walked into the SmackDown production office unannounced. He placed a folder on the table. It contained a proposal. Not a match. Not a feud. A transition. A way to preserve the bloodline, without Roman. At first, executives dismissed it. Solo had never been one for words. He played a role. He executed orders. He was the enforcer, not the architect. But the more they read, the more they realized the truth. This wasn't a heel turn. This wasn't a power grab. It was a promise. Roman's last request. Insiders say Roman had spoken to Solo in the hospital, more than once. That he entrusted him with a vision. A future. A balance of strength and unity that wouldn't dissolve into chaos. And Solo had listened. He hadn't spoken about it. He hadn't posted tributes or given interviews. But behind the scenes, Solo had been planning. Rebuilding. And at the center of that plan was Jacob Fatu. The cousin no one wanted to face. The wild card from MLW. A man whose presence could ignite, or destroy, the entire WWE landscape. But Roman had seen something in him. According to the private letter, Roman told Solo, "Jacob is what I was, before the wait. Let him carry the fire now." And so, WWE pivoted. A press conference was scheduled. At 10 a.m. EST on a Tuesday morning, WWE issued a rare statement. In light of recent developments, the WWE Universe is invited to witness a historic moment at SmackDown this Friday. The Bloodline will speak. No other details. No leaks. Speculation ignited the internet. Was Roman gone? Was this the official goodbye? Was the Bloodline finished? When the night arrived, the arena sold out in record time. And then the lights dropped. Smoke curled along the entrance ramp. The opening notes of Roman's theme hit, but it was slower. Distorted. Stripped down to a haunting bass and drumbeat that sounded more like a funeral procession than an entrance theme. Then came them. Solo Sikoa in all black. Jimmy Uso, head bowed. Jey Uso, face hollow. And finally, Jacob Fatu. His eyes were sharp. His stride was ferocious. But there was something else, something unfamiliar in his presence. Restraint. He carried the tribal necklace Roman once wore. And he didn't place it on himself. He placed it in the center of the ring. Solo took the mic. The arena was silent. Even the crowd seemed afraid to cheer. And then, in a voice steadier than anyone expected, Solo said, "The head of the table isn't here tonight. He's fighting something bigger than all of us. And if this is the end, then let the world know. We're not falling apart. We're standing together. For him. For our family." A chant broke out. "Thank you, Roman." And in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't just a faction. This wasn't just WWE. This was real. A family bound by blood, grief, and love, holding the line while their chief faded behind hospital walls. Then Jay spoke. His voice cracked with every word. You made me. You believed in me. And I hope I made you proud, yes. Then Jimmy. Then Jacob. No storylines. No super kicks. Just truth. Finally, Solo stepped forward one last time. He raised Roman's beads high. Until he returns, or until we meet again, we carry the table now. And with that, they left. No match. No celebration. Just a silence so complete, the crowd stood in stunned awe. Because that's how legends exit. Not with fireworks. But with echoes. But behind the scenes, the story was far from over. Back in California, Roman Reigns remained stable. Not improving. Not fading. Just hovering in that strange place between chapters. A doctor reportedly called it miraculous. Another called it a pause before goodbye. But Galena, she believed in something else. She believed he was waiting. Waiting for one last thing. And that thing hadn't happened yet. Because just days later, the unthinkable happened. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, returned. Not on a promo. Not for WrestleMania. But to the hospital, with a document in hand. A legal motion. To fulfill what Roman had whispered in his final conscious moments. Don't let the family fight each other. Dwayne was about to do something bold. Not just for Roman. But for the future of the bloodline. And for the legacy of a man who still had one last chapter to write. The door opened softly, but its implications thundered like pyro in a packed arena. When Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stepped into Roman Reigns' hospital room for the second time, he wasn't just a cousin. He wasn't just a megastar. He was the last chess piece in a game Roman had started playing long before anyone else realized. Galena rose from her seat. Her eyes were tired, puffy, but watchful. She didn't speak. She simply nodded. Roman, barely conscious, opened his eyes. Weak, glassy, but aware. He knew. This was the moment he had waited for. Because while the world believed Roman Reigns was slipping away quietly, he was still making moves. Dwayne placed a thick folder on the nightstand. It was more than a contract. It was a pact. Roman's final vision, spelled out line by line, was titled simply, Legacy Protocol. Inside were 5 sections. 5 final instructions. And together, they told the story of a man who knew the end was near, but who refused to leave his throne in chaos. Section 1, the unbreakable bond. Roman's first commandment was clear: the bloodline must never become a battlefield. He had seen the fractures forming. The resentment between Jimmy and Jay. The silent ambition in Solo. The wild unpredictability in Jacob Fatu. He knew grief could spark war. And he knew WWE would be eager to exploit it for ratings. So he wrote it down: no feuds. No betrayals. Not until he was gone, and not unless unanimously agreed by the family elders. Dwayne, as the most globally recognized NOI, was designated guardian of the pact. And he accepted. Section 2, the Keeper of the Flame. Roman appointed Solo Sikoa, not as the new tribal chief, but as Flame Keeper. A title never used on television. A private, ancestral role among Samoan warriors. The chief is the symbol, Roman wrote. But the Flame Keeper is the protector of the spirit. Solo would not rule with fear. He would protect the culture, the values, the identity. He would ensure that the name Reigns lived on, not just in arenas, but in stories, in rituals, in history. Section 3, the hidden heir. This section was redacted. Even Galena didn't know what it said. Only Dwayne did. And his face, when he read it, changed. He stood for a long time, staring at Roman, who could barely move. But Roman blinked once. Deliberate. Knowing. Dwayne closed the folder and nodded slowly. I understand. No one else would. Not yet. But what mattered was that Roman had passed something on, something deeper than title belts and rivalries. Something generational. Section 4, the final footage tucked inside the folder was a flash drive. Unmarked. Unlisted. It contained a video, pre-recorded weeks earlier. Roman at home, not in gear. Not as a character. But as Joe. In the video, he stared directly into the camera. "If you're seeing this," he said, "then I'm no longer with you in the ring, but maybe I'm still with you in something bigger. This business, it's not built on titles. It's built on meaning. And everything I did, every match, every betrayal, every quiet promo under blue lights, was to give you something real." He paused. Smiled faintly. "Don't cry for the tribal chief. Celebrate him. Because I never lost. I passed the torch, the only way a real warrior should. On my terms." He ended with a fist to his chest. A nod. Fade to black. Section 5, the return clause. Roman's final instruction stunned Dwayne the most. It read, "If by some grace I recover, do not welcome me back with parades. Do not place the crown back on my head. Let me walk among the people. Let me wrestle for the love, not the legacy." Roman didn't want to be king anymore. If life gave him another chance, he wanted to be Joe. To show his kids the world. To be present, not legendary. And in that moment, Dwayne Johnson, Hollywood titan, wrestling god, felt small in the presence of a man dying with more dignity than most live with. He took the flash drive. He took the folder. And he walked out of that hospital room knowing the torch had already been passed. But not to him. Not to Triple H. Not to any boardroom executive. To the family. To the culture. To the quiet fire behind the spectacle. In the weeks that followed, WWE began to shift. SmackDown didn't advertise Bloodline segments anymore. They just happened. Quiet, powerful appearances. No pyrotechnics. No titles in hand. Just presence. Solo Sikoa took on challengers, not with the arrogance of a tribal leader, but with the solemn responsibility of a man defending something sacred. Jey Uso returned to commentary, his voice softer, his eyes heavier. Jimmy Uso transitioned into mentorship. Off-screen, he guided young superstars in the Performance Center, often opening sessions with, "Roman once told me, Jacob Fatu remained the wild card, but with purpose." He rarely spoke. But when he did, it was to remind fans, "We ain't broken. We're just quiet now." And then, WWE made one final move. At WrestleMania 42, the main event slot was left unannounced. Fans speculated. Some said Cody. Others guessed CM Punk vs. Seth Rollins. But when the lights dimmed, the screen flickered, and Roman's voice echoed across the stadium with the words, "This is the last table I set." The place exploded. Not in cheers. Not in chants. In tears. The screen displayed a final tribute, not to a champion, but to a man. Clips of Roman with his children. Backstage hugs. The match with Jey at Hell in a Cell. The return in 2020. The night he stacked Daniel Bryan and Edge. The teary-eyed embrace with Seth Rollins at Survivor Series. All woven into one final message, "Thank you for believing. Now believe in what comes next." And then the lights went dark. Forever. Back in California, Roman Reigns still lies in that quiet hospital room. He's not gone. He's not returned. He just is. Somewhere between legacy and life. His heart beats. His family waits. And the WWE Universe remembers. Because Roman Reigns didn't need to wrestle forever. He didn't need to hold every title. He only needed to do one thing. Make us believe. And in doing so, he became immortal. The tribal chief may have left the table. But the echo of his footsteps will forever walk through the halls of WWE. As the wrestling world tried to heal, another whisper began to crawl beneath the surface. A whisper no one wanted to believe. It started quietly, in the back corners of industry blogs and anonymous message boards. Then it grew louder, on Reddit threads, private podcasts, and social media posts that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The whisper was this: Roman Reigns' illness might not be genetic. And if it wasn't, then the legacy he built, the name he carried, might not be his by blood. No one wanted to say it. No one dared to speak the words out loud. But it lingered. Is Roman Reigns truly the son of Sika Anoa'i? To understand why this question matters, you have to understand what the name Anoa'i means, not just to WWE, but to wrestling itself. The Anoa'i family isn't just a family. It's a dynasty. A lineage of fighters and icons stretching back generations, from the Wild Samoans to The Rock, from Umaga to the Usos. In the world of professional wrestling, bloodline isn't just a gimmick. It's the currency of legacy. It defines who you are, where you stand, what you're owed. For Roman Reigns, that legacy was the very bedrock of his character. The tribal chief. The head of the table. His power came from his lineage. But now, that table had begun to tremble. Whispers of a private DNA test ordered by one of the Anoa'i elders circulated quietly among the locker room. According to insiders, it wasn't initiated because of Roman's illness, it was because of something deeper. Something hidden. A discrepancy in early medical records. A timeline that didn't quite match. A passing comment by a former doctor who had treated Roman as a child, suggesting, "This isn't the family history I expected." And so the test was done. Silently. Secretly. No press. No digital trail. Just a cotton swab, a private courier, and a laboratory known for one thing: silence. The results? No one would confirm. But the behavior of the Anoa'i family changed overnight. Sika, Roman's father, suddenly withdrew from all public appearances. Rikishi cancelled 3 events without explanation. Jimmy and Jay refused media interviews. And Solo Sikoa, who had once vowed to carry Roman's torch, went silent. Then came the real shock. The withdrawal of Roman's name from a scheduled WWE Hall of Fame announcement. He was set to be inducted next year, posthumously or in absence. Plans were already in motion. A full video package had been produced. The final approval was pending. But at the last moment, it was pulled. Sources close to the WWE creative team say the decision came directly from Dwayne Johnson, acting under the authority of Roman's legacy protocol. The reason? There's something the public isn't ready for yet. Which brings us to the most dangerous question of all. Who was Roman Reigns' real father? Some pointed to old photos of Diana Anoa'i, Roman's mother, taken with unnamed men in the early 1980s, before her marriage to Sika. One photo in particular surfaced briefly online, showing Diana in a training facility with a man resembling a regional promoter from Florida, someone who later died in obscurity. Others whispered about a liaison with a Japanese wrestler during a cross-promotional tour. There's even a theory that Roman's true paternity was known by the elders all along, but covered up to preserve the image of a pure Anoa'i line. But none of that has been confirmed. And perhaps it never will. Because the truth is more dangerous than the rumors. The truth could shatter not just Roman's legacy, but the very structure of the bloodline. The gimmick was built on dominance. The character was born from blood. What happens if the blood was borrowed? One unnamed family source reportedly confessed in a moment of vulnerability, Joe earned everything. Titles, respect, love. But if the truth came out, if it's not in his veins, then everything falls. Everything. Even the last memory of a dying man. Even the belief we so desperately want to hold on to. And yet, in all this chaos, one thing remains certain: Roman Reigns lived as though the name was his. He carried the legacy. He embodied the power. He paid the price. Whether or not the blood was royal, he bled for the crown. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes him royal after all. But the elders? They know more. Sources close to the family claim that a sealed document now sits inside a private vault in American Samoa, handwritten, witnessed, and locked beneath the authority of the eldest living Inouye matriarch. It reportedly states, "When the world is ready, and the fire no longer burns, let the truth be known. Until then, let the warrior rest in peace." It is unclear what that document contains. But it may be Roman's final truth. One he didn't speak with words, but carried in silence. Meanwhile, at WWE headquarters, a new movement has begun. The Legacy Beyond Blood campaign. It's not a storyline. It's a tribute. A message from TripleH, now overseeing the future. Whatever the truth may be, Roman Reigns changed this business. He gave more than his blood. He gave his soul. And no DNA test will ever take that away. The campaign features a black armband with 2 letters etched in gold, JR. Not Junior. But just Roman. Because maybe that's all he ever needed to be. Not the blood of kings. Not the son of legends. Just Roman. The one who fought. The one who led. The one who made us believe, until the very end. Behind the bright lights and sold-out stadiums, behind the pyro, the chants, and the worldwide streaming numbers, WWE is bracing for something it has never truly prepared for. The death of Roman Reigns. Not a character death. Not a storyline exit. A real one. Because in Stamford, Connecticut, inside the walls of WWE headquarters, plans have already been drafted. Folders have been labeled. Protocols initiated. They call it, unofficially, Operation Legacy Collapse. And it's not just about honoring Roman's memory. It's about survival. Because if Roman Reigns dies, it won't just be the end of a career. It will be the collapse of a system built around a single man. A man who redefined modern wrestling. A man who was simultaneously villain and hero. A man who kept both locker room politics and global storylines glued together. Remove him, and the fractures begin to spread. At the top of WWE's secret contingency file is the question they all fear: who replaces Roman Reigns? The answer isn't simple. There's no clear successor. Not because there's a lack of talent, but because Roman was more than talent. He was gravity. Everything pulled toward him. Every rivalry meant something because it involved him. Every promo hit harder because it echoed through his presence. Still, 3 names dominate the conversation. Solo Sikoa. The enforcer turned silent leader. TripleH is said to be cautiously backing Solo as the bridge figure. Strong. Mysterious. Unpredictable. But still unproven on the mic and in front of global media. Jacob Fatu. Wild. Charismatic. A throwback to the raw intensity of Umaga or Prime Roman. But his lack of exposure to WWE's main audience makes his elevation risky. Jey Uso. The emotional center of the Bloodline. The man who first challenged Roman. Fans love him. Wrestlers respect him. But WWE executives fear he may lack the ruthless edge to carry the entire industry as a leading man. Privately, Paul Heyman has endorsed a Council of Kings approach, a 3-man leadership of Solo, Jacob, and Jey. Not one new chief, but a tribunal of power, mirroring ancient Samoan warrior councils. Vince McMahon, watching from a distance, reportedly called the idea too theatrical. But he isn't running the show anymore. And those who are desperate to avoid a civil war. Because if Roman dies, the temptation for WWE is to turn it into a storyline. But the risk? It becomes exploitation. And the fans, especially in 2025, will revolt. In the days since Roman's hospitalization, fan forums have gone dark with mourning. Twitter timelines are flooded with candle emojis. Instagram is awash with black and white edits of Roman's best moments. TikTok has transformed his promos into elegies, his lines into poetry. Acknowledge me, this is my island, I'm not a good guy. I'm not a bad guy. I'm the guy. But beneath the sadness simmers something more volatile, anger. Because if WWE spins Roman's death into a dramatic bloodline feud, fans will see through it. They'll rage. They'll walk away. And WWE knows it. Sources say several marketing executives have already pulled back on posthumous merchandise plans. One pitch for a Last Spear t-shirt line was reportedly shut down after internal backlash. If we turn this into cash, one exec said, we lose the soul of the audience. For years, WWE blurred reality and fiction. But this is different. This is a real man, a real father, a real warrior who bled for the business and now lies in silence. You don't exploit that. You honor it. And that's why the next few decisions WWE makes could determine the next decade of its future. The fragile future, without Roman, what's left? WWE has survived major losses before. Eddie Guerrero, Owen Hart, Chyna, Brody Lee. Each time, the industry mourned, then moved on. But Roman is different. Roman wasn't just beloved. He was foundational. He represented stability in an era of chaos. When AEW rose, when ratings fell, when the pandemic shuttered arenas, Roman Reigns stood tall. He returned when others wouldn't. He performed under masks and protocols. He reinvented himself when fans were tired of the old version. He stayed. And now, he's leaving. And the WWE's entire narrative structure is hanging by a thread. Without Roman, the bloodline loses its central core. Paul Heyman may step away permanently. Seth Rollins, once Roman's peer, feels strangely misplaced. Cody Rhodes risks becoming a hero without a villain. The SmackDown locker room has no anchor. The Raw brand faces storyline spillover it isn't prepared to absorb. Even NXT, which used Roman's legacy as a rallying point for up-and-coming Samoan stars, now struggles to reframe. WWE without Roman Reigns is like a cathedral missing its foundation. Beautiful from afar, but crumbling underfoot. The outside world reacts. ESPN has prepared a feature titled The Man Who Made Us Believe. Netflix is rumored to be in talks with Galina Becker for a possible docuseries. Only to be paused after she reportedly said, I'm not ready to turn my husband's pain into entertainment. The Rock has privately offered to fund a foundation in Roman's name, one that supports children battling leukemia. He refuses to make it public until the family says yes. John Cena, often asked for comment, responded with the words, the greatest legacy is how he made us feel. Meanwhile, AEW's Tony Khan issued a rare cross-promotional statement, Roman Reigns was a titan. Rivalries end when men fall. Today, we mourn one of wrestling's greatest. The industry is mourning, but it's also holding its breath. Because if Roman Reigns dies, and WWE handles it wrong, they won't just lose a champion. They could lose everything. And in a quiet room in California, Roman still lingers. Still breathes. Still fights. But the time is running out. The monitors blink slower. The room gets quieter. And the world waits. Not just for news. Not just for closure. But for the one thing that Roman Reigns gave us all. It happened on a Sunday. Not in front of a stadium. Not during a premium live event. Not with fireworks or spotlights or championship gold hoisted above the crowd. It happened in a hospital room bathed in the soft glow of morning light, where time felt like it had been placed on pause. A space where warriors don't roar, they whisper. Where legends don't fight, they let go. And on that quiet Sunday morning, Roman Reigns, Lady Joseph and Noah went silent. Not with pain. Not with fear. But with peace. The heart that had carried a family, a company, and an entire generation of fans, simply stopped. And the silence that followed would become the loudest moment in WWE history. In the hours before it happened, Galina Becker sat alone. For days, she had stood strong. For their children. For the family. For the cameras outside the hospital gates. For Roman himself. She fielded phone calls from executives. She managed whispered prayers from Samoan elders. She comforted their daughter when she asked why Daddy hadn't opened his eyes. But in those final hours, Galina knew. She knew this was the moment Roman had been holding out for. Not the championship gold. Not the induction speeches. Not the press releases. She called them into the room. 2 sons. 1 daughter. Too young to fully understand. Too old not to feel the gravity of what was happening. Galina knelt beside the hospital bed and whispered, "It's time to say goodbye." No script could write what happened next. His daughter clutched his hand and placed her head on his chest, as if listening for the final echo of the warrior within. 1 son tucked his father's signature black gauntlet under the blanket. "So you can still fight," he said. The youngest didn't say anything. He just cried. And then Galina, wife, mother, and backbone of the tribal chief, leaned down and whispered into Roman's ear, "You held the table for everyone. Now let us hold it for you." The monitor slowed. The lines grew still. And with one final breath, no drama, no theatrics, the tribal chief went quiet. The news broke at 10:12 a.m. Pacific Time. A single tweet from WWE's official account. "We are deeply saddened to share the passing of Lady Joseph Anoa'i, known to the world as Roman Reigns. He was a father, a husband, a leader, and a fighter. Our tribal chief. Forever." In seconds, the internet shattered. The hashtag Thank You Roman trended in 63 countries. AEW suspended its programming for the night. TripleH called for a 10-bell salute across all WWE brands. Raw, SmackDown, and NXT each opened their shows the same way, black screen. No music. Just Roman's voice echoing. "I'm not the good guy. I'm not the bad guy. I'm the guy." And then, silence. In Stamford, an emergency meeting was called. TripleH reportedly broke down while reading the announcement aloud to staff. Nick Khan cancelled all media appearances for the week. Kevin Dunn, WWE's longtime production head, reportedly walked into Vince McMahon's old office, sat in Roman's Hall of Fame chair mock-up, and said, "We just lost the spine." There was no plan in place. Not really. Operation Legacy Collapse had protocols, contingency press statements, and internal guidelines. But nothing could prepare anyone for the real emotion. For the photos pouring in from fans who had dressed like Roman for Halloween. For the videos of Make-A-Wish kids who had called him their superhero. For the wrestlers, grown men, crying mid-interview, unable to finish sentences like, "He gave me a chance, he saw something in me, he believed in me when I didn't." 4 days later, Roman Reigns was laid to rest. Not in Los Angeles. Not in Stamford. But in American Samoa. The ceremony was private. No media. No cameras. No ring ropes. Just family. Just warriors. A tribal procession stretched for miles. Mourners wore black lava-lavas and white necklaces. Women sang in Samoan. Men beat drums carved from ancestral trees. At the front, Galina led the children. Their daughter carried Roman's WWE Universal Championship. Not because it was a symbol of power, but because it was his favorite belt. At the rear, walked The Rock. He didn't speak. He didn't perform. He just carried the torch, literally. A single flame. Because in Samoan tradition, when a great warrior dies, the family carries his fire to the ocean. And when they reached the shore, the torch was handed to Roman's oldest son. With trembling hands, the boy stepped forward and planted the flame in the sand. Then he looked to the sky and whispered, "Acknowledge him." And the wind picked up. And the waves crashed louder. And the fire did not go out. 2 weeks later, at a tribute show titled The Island of the Chief, Paul Heyman stood in the ring for the final time. He was pale. Tired. Grieving. But when he spoke, the arena froze. For years, I said my name was Paul Heyman, and I was the wise man to the tribal chief. But tonight, I say this as a man with no script, no storyline, and no shield between me and the truth. He paused. Roman Reigns was not just the greatest champion of the modern era. He was the most human of all the legends. He loved. He wept. He feared. And still, he stood. Until the very end. He raised a folded piece of paper, Roman's handwritten speech, the one he never got to read. Heyman began, I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know what happens to the Bloodline, to WWE, or to the name Roman Reigns. But I know this, if I gave you something real, if I made you feel, then I did my job. And I can rest now. Let the table live on. Let the next man rise. But never forget who stood here first. Heyman folded the paper. Tears fell freely. And then, with a trembling hand, he placed Roman's black glove in the center of the ring, and walked away. In the weeks that followed, WWE quietly announced they would never again use the title Tribal Chief. It was retired. Not as a gimmick, but as a sacred name. The table Roman set was symbolically burned in a private ceremony. The ashes were scattered in American Samoa, at the exact location where his torch was planted. And every year, on the anniversary of his death, WWE's flagship show plays the same opening video, Roman stepping out of the tunnel. Fans roaring. His silhouette backlit by fire. And his voice, "This is my island." Fade to black. He didn't get to end his career in the ring. He didn't get a final 5-star match. But Roman Reigns gave the world something no title ever could. A legacy. And for those who loved him, inside the business and out, his story doesn't end in silence. It lives on in the roar of the crowd. In the tears of his family. And in every fan who stands up and chants one last time. A year had passed. 12 months since the world stood still. Since headlines screamed the impossible. Since the wrestling universe lost its tribal anchor and the Anoa'i family buried the man who held it all together. Roman Reigns was gone. But he was not forgotten. And in his absence, something began to stir. Something small. Something quiet. A whisper, carried not on the internet, but through the blood. A name. A message. A destiny. It began, as all powerful stories do, not with fanfare, but with a letter. It arrived at WWE headquarters on a warm Tuesday morning in June. No return address. No markings. Just a thick ivory envelope with a red wax seal. The seal was unmistakable. 2 crossed spears, encircled by a tribal pattern etched only into one family's memory, the personal crest of Lady Joseph Anoa'i. It was Roman's. Inside was a note, handwritten, untraceable. If you are reading this, then I have been gone a year. I ask that this not be read on TV. Not be turned into storyline. Just truth. Just honor. There is one more seat at the table. But it's not for any of you. Not yet. It belongs to the one I never introduced. It belongs to my son. The note was signed, Jr. Just Roman. The wrestling world had known Roman as a father. But only to the 3 children seen with him in public, the ones who walked with Galena at his funeral, who laid roses on his casket, who appeared in the tribute video aired across the globe. But there was another. A child born in silence. A child the world never knew about. And by Roman's request, kept out of the spotlight, completely. His name, revealed in the letter, was Koa. Born during Roman's initial battle with leukemia in 2019. A child Roman once called my strength when I had none. A child who, even as a toddler, bore the Anoa'i stare. Koa was raised far from the ring. No WWE cameras. No backstage appearances. Not even a whisper among the roster. Roman had shielded him, not because he was ashamed, but because he knew what was coming. He knew the weight of legacy. The poison of fame. The shadows of expectation. And so, he let Koa grow without the crown. Without the burden. But before he passed, he wrote one final instruction. If he chooses the ring, let him find it on his own. Do not hand it to him. Do not push him. If he is truly of my blood, the ring will call to him like it did to me. And now, at age 6, Koa had begun asking questions. Why do people call Daddy a chief? Why are people chanting in the videos? Why does my last name make the coaches stare? Because Koa, though shielded from wrestling, had not been shielded from heritage. Galena had taught him Samoan chants. Paul Heyman had visited once every few months, bringing him books, not about WWE, but about leadership. And Jey Uso? He had quietly taken up the mantle of uncle. Bringing him to training sessions. Teaching him respect. Teaching him silence. Until one day, Koa stood on the edge of a practice ring at the performance center. Watched a rookie fumble a dive. Then quietly said, "That's not how Daddy did it." Every coach in the room froze. Because the voice wasn't loud. But it carried. TripleH received the second letter the following week. This one shorter. Typed. Anonymous, but unmistakable in tone. He is not ready. But one day, he will be. You'll know him when you see him. He'll walk like a shadow. He'll speak like a storm. You won't need a promo to know who he is. You'll just feel it. The bottom of the page contained one line, bold, simple, let the fire sleep. And so, WWE did nothing. No announcements. No leaks. No teases. Just a quiet addition to their internal watch list, but something was already moving. Every year, the Anoa'i family gathers for a sacred event called Malaga o Lutupu, the Journey of the King. It's not public. Not televised. But this year, something changed. The elders circled a fire pit, where the flames once danced for Roman. And Koa stood silently at its edge. The youngest ever allowed to enter. He was dressed in black. No title. No ceremony. Just a necklace, Roman's. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He simply stepped forward, took a single ember from the fire, and placed it in a new bowl. An elder asked, in Samoan, "Do you carry the blood?" Koa didn't answer with words. He just nodded. And the fire flickered. And the line continued. What happens now? Nothing. For now. WWE will wait. The family will wait. The world will wait. Because Roman's final wish wasn't for noise. It was for time. For patience. For destiny to rise on its own terms. But somewhere, in a quiet house in Florida, a boy practices his father's entrance. Somewhere, in a private gym, he mimics the way Roman held the mic. Somewhere, in a child's journal, he writes the words, "One day, I'll take back the table." And maybe, 5 years from now, maybe 10. The lights will dim. The screen will flicker. The music will shift. And a new silhouette will appear. Not as a prince. Not as a tribute. But as a son. And the crowd will rise. And a new voice will whisper. Acknowledge me.